Hello, it's 6:30 on Sunday morning and I'm the only one up. So I wanted to talk today about playing a role. This is something that's very recently become clear to me, and it's also just come up in something I read, so I thought this was a good time to get my thoughts out. So I was just reading an article in bustle.com, never heard of it, don't know what it is, but somebody posted a link to it on one of the Facebook groups for autism that I follow, and it talks about the 8 symptoms of autistic women, and there was nothing new in there really until the 8th one, which was it's hard for you not to have a clear role. And it talks about many of the women I met who were diagnosed in life report they have had trouble in social settings where they didn't have a clearly defined role. And it talks about going on to create a role for yourself during social gatherings, perhaps helping in the kitchen or cleaning up. And this so closely reflects exactly what I've been experiencing that I really wanted to talk about it, because I think it may be quite common. Noise in the background is our little cat playing. Bless her. So, a lot of people are a different person in different situations, and that's perfectly normal. I think if you're chatting with friends and colleagues at work, you wouldn't necessarily say the same things or behave the same as if you were chatting with friends in the pub or at your own home. So I think we all play a role in a way, but I've been aware for a long time that I have taken this to further lengths and almost compartmentalised my life to be different people in different roles. And this came to a head recently because I was trying to work out why it was that some social situations, like I go to a knitting group on a Wednesday afternoon. We meet in a cafe, and a group of us, most of whom I already know, there's not many strangers turn up. We meet and have coffee together and sit and knit or crochet or whatever together. And it is a completely social situation. I have no other role. I'm one of the people who set up the group, but that doesn't carry any ongoing responsibilities at all. So I used to go along to that, and it was relaxing, stimulating, enjoyable, and I'd come home. And it's only in the last year or two that started to actually become quite tiring, to the extent that I think I've said in a previous video that Wednesdays, cat's chasing a toy mouse. On Wednesdays, I used to work in the morning, go to knit group in the afternoon, and come home exhausted. And it's because it's people. But knit group didn't used to be so exhausting, and I was just trying to work out this week why a year or two ago knit group was just a relaxing, stimulating social environment, and now it's exhausting. And I worked out why. It's because I've started playing a role. So about a year ago, I started a podcast, so that's a fortnightly vlog on YouTube, and it's me talking about what crocheting and knitting and whatever I've been doing. It's really just for craft people, and I put it up on YouTube, and I started recording every 2 weeks, and that made a difference to my knit group behaviour, because I was suddenly talking to people that I hoped would watch the podcast. So I was kind of a salesperson, and I was also talking to some of the people who had watched the podcast. So I was in role as the podcast host to sort of say, oh, here's that cardigan you saw on the podcast, and hey, I've got this new thing, I'm going to show it on the podcast, but here we go, you get to look at it. So I was kind of started to play a role, and over the last 12 months that has become more and more exhausting. And I also started then running retreats, knitting and crochet retreats, and some of the people in the group have become customers, come along to the retreats. Some of them have come along and just taken part for the day. So my role in the group has gone from just being social knitter to being podcast person, YouTube promoter, and now business owner and salesperson. And then when I stopped, when I realised I wasn't going to be able to do retreats anymore, I'm now doing craft lessons, so teaching crochet techniques, teaching weaving techniques, that kind of thing. A group of people who might use the services of my business, and that has changed my role. Not in the sense that I'm handing out flyers and trying to talk people into coming to classes, not at all. In fact, quite the opposite. I've just started to involve myself really with what people are doing and with helping them find new techniques. So quite often people will ask me to demonstrate or to teach them a technique during the session in the afternoon, and that's fine. I love to teach, I really enjoy it, but I slip into this role. So instead of just sitting there knitting, drinking my coffee, thinking, do I want a piece of cake? I'm sitting there thinking, oh, what's she doing? I wonder if she's seen this technique I'm using. I wonder if she'd be interested in it. Oh, I wonder if that lady has met that lady. I wonder if they know each other's names. Perhaps I should introduce them. And constantly on duty. And this is how I felt when I took that little group to a shop. Did I tell you about that? What did I chat about that? Just after the last retreat, we had a little team trip out. Me and the knit group, and a few of the people who were on the retreat joined us there. And it was just to go and visit a warehouse thing that sells stuff that we might normally buy, but it was to visit it in person and go and look at some of the stuff they had that wasn't necessarily available on the website. So it's just a social thing. And yet, because there were people who had been on the retreat and were booked on another retreat, I was playing the role of retreat host. So I was making sure everybody had got what they needed, everybody was happy, everybody knew what they were doing, everybody had got coffee, paid for the coffees, all that kind of stuff. There's no need for me to do that. It was a purely social event. But because of those particular people were there, I slipped into the role of retreat host. And this really made me start to realise that this is something that I've been doing. And now to read this in this article, it just makes me realise that maybe a lot of you have been doing it too. So I'd actually already this weekend started to investigate this, because I think probably the place this started a long time ago was when I first started visiting my mother-in-law. So husband and I have been together since my first year at university. So I would have been 19, and around about that time I would have gone and I met up with his family in their home. So I hadn't really been in family homes before, apart from my own and my best friends. And in my best friend's home, I'd known them since I was 8 or 9. So we didn't have conversations with the parents. I would come in and say hi, and thank you for the tea and all that kind of stuff. I didn't actually have any interactions with them. And that was really the only other home I'd been in. And then suddenly I was in somebody else's family home, and I was attempting to make adult-to-adult relationships, and it didn't work. I didn't fit in at all in the family. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't just be the quiet sort of child visiting, go off to the bedroom or out to the garden or whatever. I was visiting as an adult, and I didn't have any idea how to do that. And it was very, very painful. And I started to learn that there were certain things that I could do that lessened the pain. Like I could play a role. I could clear up after dinner. I could take the plates to the kitchen. I wouldn't be allowed to put them in the dishwasher or anything like that. But I could clear the plates. And they quite often had wine there, red and white. So I could get the bottles open, and I could put them in the place they like to keep them, and then I could pour everybody a glass of wine. I could make sure everybody had a glass of wine that they wanted and get them topped up. That was a role, and it was almost like I had a list of things I can do that cause no pain. And there was lots of problems finding those things, because I would help chop in the veg, but I would do it wrong, and that would be so humiliating. And there were all these unwritten family rules that I had no idea about. And interestingly, my husband's brother brought home a wife a while after me. And she had no problems like this, absolutely none. She fitted in fine. She was perfectly happy. She was older than me. Not only the fact that it was later that they got together, but she is older than me. But she didn't have any of these issues at all, and I had a terrible time. I really did. So really, I think that was when I started to play a role, and it slowly developed throughout my life. And then in the last year or so, it has completely gone ballistic. And so, having had these thoughts this week, I then, expecting my mum-in-law to come and see us this weekend. Now, she lives down south, we live up north, so, but she wasn't staying with us. She's come up with her partner, and she's staying in a B&B, and she came to see us on Friday. And I decided that I wasn't going to play the role. Actually, I'm not sure I did consciously decide that I wasn't going to play the role. Hello. But I didn't play the role. When she first arrived, before dinner, I told her and her partner that I'd been diagnosed autistic. Oh, sneeze. And then we had dinner, and I just didn't play the role. I said things that I was thinking without, not directly, immediately, but I didn't censor myself in the same ways that I normally do. And I did what I wanted to do. So I wanted to go sit in the front room and knit, so I went in the front room knitted. And everybody else come and sat with me, and I was happy just to sit and knit. I didn't want to talk, I didn't want to do anything. They decided to watch TV. I watched TV with them. Well, I sat with them and watched TV. I just did my own thing. Wasn't making conversation. Was just sitting in the room on my own. It was brilliant, and I didn't feel the need to go up to bed particularly early, and when I did go to bed I was quite relaxed. And it was just like a light had gone off in my head. It was like, oh my goodness, I can exist not playing the role. So that was really, really exciting. And I was chatting to one of my friends on Instagram the other day and saying that I'm playing a role too much. She said, we just have to stop playing that role. And I said, well, how? And she said, I don't know. And I didn't know either. And clearly, now I do. I don't know whether I'll be able to do that in all situations, but certainly the situations where it's not necessary. It is not necessary for me to play the role of host and teacher at every gathering I go to where there might be craft people. Sometimes it's useful, but when it's a social situation and I'm meant to be relaxing, then it isn't appropriate, and I need to let myself know that it's okay not to play that role. It's okay just to come as myself, to sit and knit, which is what I want to do. So, over to you then. Have you experienced this? Do you play a role? Has it got out of hand? Does it help? Do you know what I mean? Does this make sense to you? I'd really love, if you're watching this, if you have any kind of experience that's similar or contradictory or whatever, please just let me know. So I'd really love to know what else is going on for people. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Bye.